All right, well, welcome everyone. Great to see everyone on. My name is Jay Berkowitz, and Gary Falkowitz is with me. And our topic today is prospect and convert. And what we're going to talk about is how to get traffic to your website and then convert those opportunities into paying customers. And I want to start out with the most important piece of the puzzle here. And there's really three critical things we're going to cover today. The first one is the 80-20 rule, that you can actually get 80% of your best customers, 80% of your best prospects from Google. And we're going to talk about the three ways you do that. The second thing is that when you get a phone call, those phone calls convert approximately 24%. I'll show you some actual statistics. So we want to push as much traffic into phone calls as opposed to form fills that convert at only 2%. And finally, Gary's going to share with you strategies that can convert 50% more prospects from that first phone call or form fill. And it's very, very critical when you think about the numbers. Like if you get 100 leads in a month, and right now you're converting 12 of them, Gary's going to give you strategies to take that number up to 24. And the math is really phenomenal. Because if you get twice as many customers for the same marketing expenditure, you're cutting your cost per acquisition in half, or you're doubling your clients, or you can double your marketing budget. Like the math is really significant when you can improve your conversion 50%. So this stuff really works. We recently did a webinar with Scott Silver, who's an attorney here in Florida, and he showed we showed all the numbers. He showed all the stuff we do and he does behind the scenes. And the red line are website visitors. He went from about 2,000 website visitors to over 8,000. And the green line are conversions, basically what Google calls goals, either a call or a form or a chat. And we've been able to replicate this in many different industries and categories for lawyers and for other service industries. Here's a client whose users or unique website visitors went from the 500s to the 17,000s, and their leads from 30, 40 a month, or their goals, their conversion 30, 40 a month to 181. And here's a Dallas attorney who went from really, 1,000 a month, 1,500 a month in terms of website visitors to over 12,000, and their leads from 67, 77 to 260, 280. So this stuff really works when we apply the practices. So let me introduce Gary, and then we'll get rolling with the content. Gary's been an attorney for 15 years, managed intake and referral for Parker Wakeman. And I know Jerry Parker, we've worked with those guys. Jerry is an absolute rock star in the legal industry. And so if Gary ran his intake, you definitely know he knows what he's doing. And he started Maximum Intake, which is a consulting business, the Falkowitz Law Firm, of which he's a managing partner, and an intake conversion business, which is what he's going to share with us today. And of course, he wrote the book, The Complete Guide to Law Firm Intake. So you're going to get a lot of that great content today. And Gary, you were going to introduce me, so please.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody taking some time today. Not that there are many other places you can be at this moment, but I do wish all of you and your families and friends and business nothing but health and success moving forward. Looking forward to speaking with everybody today and giving you some great tips about how you can do a much better job at converting your leads into clients. But Jay's going to start us off. Let me tell you a little bit about Jay today. He is the founder of 10 Golden Rules Internet Marketing for Law Firms. He's the author of 4 books, so he has me at a 4-to-1 ratio. 2 of his books are Amazon bestsellers. He's an international keynote speaker, and he was the director of marketing for Sprint, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola. So the guy knows what he's talking about. This is not going to take up a big chunk of your day. So, put the other side, the distractions to the side for a moment or for a few minutes, and let's see what we can do to help your businesses out, especially since most of us are probably remote at this time. So let's, with that, Jay, the ball is yours.
Thanks, Gary, and we'll get to Gary as soon as I'm done. So I want to start with the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. And Vilfredo Pareto in the 1700s analyzed the wealth of everyone in his Italian area. And basically he discovered this principle that 80% of the wealth was held in 20% of the families. And the 80-20 rule has been true in business in almost every business I've looked at, with one exception on the internet. It's often like 90-10 or 99-1. And 90% of your opportunity comes from 1%, 10% of the categories. And I really want to simplify internet marketing for lawyers. It's different in other categories, but if you're in professional services, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and this is where most of our focus is going to be today, 80% of your focus should be on Google. And once you figure out the 3 parts of Google and really nail it, then you can play around with other things, like maybe add some Bing testing. Yahoo's is good, and some of the legal directories. But really, your focus should be on those 3 categories of Google. So today we're going to spend time on Google advertising, pay-per-click, the maps section, and SEO, because like I said, 80% of your opportunity is going to come from those 3 sections. So when you do a Google search today, this is a search for personal injury attorney near me, personal injury attorney near me. And the 3 areas is, number 1, pay-per-click, the paid ads. And Google is now showing 4 paid ads at the top of your search. So remember, they used to call them the right-hand side ads. Those right-hand side ads are completely gone. And whether you do a search on a desktop or a laptop, it's going to look exactly the same as your cell phone. So those ads, the 4 ads appear at the top. Then there's the map results. Very, very precious, very important. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. And finally, the SEO, the search engine optimization, which was the traditional area that Google originally had the 10 SEO results. So how do you perform in the pay-per-click? And by the way, I'm often asked, does pay-per-click work? And absolutely it does. I mean, you wouldn't see advertisers in Google if it didn't work, because we can measure precisely to the penny if it works. We'll show you that analysis in a minute. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a clean account structure. So what we do is we create ad groups for like keywords, similar keywords, things like auto accident attorney, auto accident lawyer, New York auto accident lawyer. And then the ads in that ad group are very consistent. Auto accident lawyers, serious attorneys fighting for you, top accident lawyers, motor vehicle accident attorneys, top accident lawyers. And then those ads go to a landing page that is very consistent, very specific for that ad group. So for example, if we also did medical malpractice or nursing home work, we would have a landing page that's specific for that practice area. We'd have keywords for that practice area, ads for that practice area. So here's an example of a landing page. And then, of course, the page works in mobile. Very, very critical. We're going to spend a lot of time, as I mentioned, talking about mobile. The pages have to be fully responsive. The forms and everything has to work in mobile. Now, some of the advanced things that you should be doing is, number 1, you should add chat to your website. So when the person gets to the page, the chat box pops up, and we see an improvement of 20 to 30% when we add the chat function on the website. Sorry, we're getting Zoom flashing on there. The other thing we do is we track phone calls. So we use CallRail or another service. And again, we're able to get very precise information of which Google ad worked, which campaign worked, did these calls come from Google or Avo? And that's where we get some of the intelligence I talked about earlier. We layer remarketing into these campaigns. Everybody's seen remarketing campaigns as a consumer if you don't know what they are professionally. So somebody gets hurt, they go to our client's website, they don't sign up, or they don't call the tracking phone number. And then we can, later in the day when they're looking at the weather or they're looking at their stocks or sports scores, we can show them an ad for our client. You've probably seen that as a consumer. If you look at a pair of sneakers and you don't buy the sneakers, everywhere you go on the website, you're seeing those sneakers for a couple weeks. So remarketing is a very powerful way to convert clients if they don't convert in the first instance. So we can reverse engineer. We can get fantastic information about what your competitors are doing. So we can tell you how much they're spending. We can show you the keywords that they're bidding on. We can show you their ads, their top performing ads. We can get information on what landing pages and testing they're doing on their website. And we can get very, very detailed information, again, about their keywords, their bids, their landing pages, etc. And we can also show you all of your competitors and how much they're spending over a period of time. Now, one advanced strategy in the paid area is the PPC ad in maps. And Google sort of snuck this in there. So there's the 4 paid ads, then the maps section, then down below is the SEO. And they've snuck one little ad that all you can see is it's designated by the word ad. And they've sort of snuck that into the maps result. So that becomes a very, very powerful pay-per-click ad for us. Generally, this ad is working better than these ads because the consumers, a lot of consumers like to click on the map area and don't like to click on the ads, and they haven't realized yet that this is an ad. So the first area we talked about is the pay-per-click, these ads that appear at the top of the page. The second area is the SEO, search engine optimization. Now, Google shows 10 SEO results on the page, and I'm going to show you how you get results in the SEO. How do you get in those 10 results? And Google has over 600 factors in their mathematical algorithm. But I like to simplify these things. So I call it the ABCs of SEO. So we simplify it down to the A, the B, and the C. So the A is the architecture of the website. How is the website structured? I mean, this is a simple sitemap, and a sitemap makes it very easy for Google's automated robots to come in and read all the different words on your website. In terms of clean code, your website's got to be easy. The HTML, the code on the website's got to be easy for those spiders to read. Your site's got to be fast. We look at the architecture or the page speed, because if your website's slow to load, Google's not going to send traffic there, and consumers are going to go there and they're going to get frustrated and leave. So all the mathematics, the measurements that Google do are going to work against you. We look at things like the mobile site and the mobile performance. Google has a free mobile test that we always run on a website. And we look for other architectural things like broken links. And there's about 100 criteria that we do when we do a website audit to look at your SEO performance, principally looking at the architecture of the website. So the A is the architecture, the B is the backlinks. And this is the importance of other websites linking to your website. Very important. You can't put links on your website and improve your SEO. This is something you've got to do off your website, on other websites. So that we got written up in the Wall Street Journal, and we got links from other websites to 10 Golden Rules, to our website. Here's Scott Silver, and he got a link from Cornell University Law School's website, linking right to his website. Very, very powerful. Here's our client in Indianapolis, and they did free rides on New Year's Eve, and they got a link to their website. This is, here's Parker Wakeman again, Gary, and they got written up in a book. The book is found on Google, and there's a link in the book to their website. So the more authentic and powerful and important websites you can get to link to your website, the better. Here's a link to Parker Wakeman again from AARP, the Retirement Association. So A is architecture, B is backlink, C is content. You've got to have the words people are searching on your website if you want to be found for those words. So if you're a car accident lawyer in Indianapolis, Indiana, you've obviously got to have the words car accident lawyer in Indianapolis, Indiana. But what if somebody's in an Uber or Lyft accident? How do you get that kind of information, new information that people will be searching for on your website? And you basically do that by adding content to your website on a regular basis. You add articles and blogs and press releases and redo product service pages and just all kinds of different ways that you add content to your website, pictures, videos, etc. So here's an example of a blog, another blog. Here's a tactic that this firm in California uses. I call it traffic blotter blogging. And basically they blog about every traffic accident. They pull that off the police wire. And if somebody's searching for, car accident at Water Avenue in Fountain Valley, there's a good, that never would have been written about before. That never would have been search engine optimized. Another advanced strategy is AMP pages, accelerated mobile pages. And basically this is a software, a code that you can provide to Google, and basically it provides a simple blog software that will rank better on mobile pages. And finally, people always say, like, what should I write about? How do I figure out what to write about? And the strategy I always share, the sort of modern SEO, if you will, is answering questions. Because let's face it, every lawyer has been optimizing for car accident lawyer or, best IRS accountant. People have been optimizing for these phrases for 5-10 years. So they're very, very competitive. But like I said before, when you come up with something new, like how to apply for COVID financing or the CARES Act or Uber car accident lawyer, new things that come up in your industry, answer those questions that your customers are asking on a regular basis. And that's really what I call the new SEO. So what we do a lot of times is we'll record video of our lawyer clients, accountant clients answering these questions. And then those videos become the start of content where we write articles, we post them on the social media, we send out a monthly newsletter. The content, the answers to questions become the start of the content, and then that content is cascaded throughout the social media. So we talked about the pay-per-click, the paid ads at the top of Google, the SEO, the ABCs of SEO, how to get in this area here. You need your architecture right, your backlinks, and your content. But this is very, very important new turf, if you will, new territory in Google. And it's the Google Maps section. And when I say it's new, I mean, it's been around for 3 or 4 years, but really only in the past year has Google opened it up to SEO, or search engine optimization. And there's a lot of things going on in this Maps, or GMB is what Google calls it, Google My Business. So when you go in the back end of your GMB, you can claim your listing, and then you can update it with all kinds of information. So first and foremost, there's reviews in there. So, think of this almost like a new social media. Google failed at Google+, so they've launched their own social media site. So there's reviews, visitors can ask and answer questions, and you've got to make sure you're answering those questions. You've got to make sure you're logging in, or someone on your customer service team is logging into Google My Business to answer questions. You can add photos and post videos, and that's a great way. It's like the content of SEO on your website, the Google My Business. Think of it as a micro website that you can own and control and search engine optimize. And that's the first SEO update that comes up. And finally, you can update it with posts. I'll show you those in a minute. And here's really sort of breaking news. There's now a follow button on Google My Business. So people can actually follow you or follow a company on their GMB. So as I mentioned, this is the #1 SEO result. So there's the paid ads at the top, and then the Maps SEO, or search engine optimization. So how do you improve? Like, how do you make sure you get in the, remember I said there's a paid ad. How do you get in this 3-pack is what we call it in the industry. How do you make sure that you come up when somebody searches for, car accident lawyer near me? Well, the first and maybe most important thing is the reviews. You need lots and lots of reviews. You want to focus your internal team. You want to have assign almost like a concierge program where you walk people through your, dealing with your law firm, make it a great experience from day one to the day they get a check. And then just before you deliver the check, ask them for a review, or just when you settle the case and they're going to be happy, ask them for a review. It's a great time to do that. I mentioned the questions and answers. You want to be monitoring that on the page. And you can add pictures and videos to your Google My Business. So you want to do that at least once a week, because that's kind of Google's guideline. Add a picture, add an article, add an update to the Google My Business. And these guys are doing a great job. They're adding updates on a regular basis to the Google My Business. And to see how you perform, just search your firm name and city, and see what's going on in your Google My Business. How frequently is it updated? You can do that just easily on your phone. So there's many strategies that you can improve your map SEO. You know, we think of it now like a search engine optimization, like the ABCs of SEO. There's certain steps you can do to come up in that first section of SEO, which is, you know, we call Google Maps as a consumer, or they call Google My Business. Lots of reviews, lots of updates, weekly updates, add photos and videos, ask and answer questions. So a lot of times if somebody asks me a question, I say, I'll answer your question free of charge, but I want you to do me a favor. Can you ask that question when we're done here in the Google My Business? I'll send you a link and then I'll answer the question. And that way I'm kind of goosing the SEO algorithm. And finally, there's something we call NAP, or name, address, and phone. Oh, sorry, one more thing. This is a great tool for reviews. It's called Bird Eye, and it's a best practice for law firms. The NAP, name, address, and phone. Final thing, very, very important. You've got to make sure that your Google My Business listing is incredibly precisely consistent everywhere else throughout the internet. So your name, your address, and the phone number are precise everywhere you go throughout the internet. And there's tools out there. This is the Moz Local tool that can tell you what % of your listings are correct, and it can give you suggestions for other listings to go incorrect. So that's the Google piece, okay? The pay-per-click, the maps, and the SEO piece, the search engine optimization. As I mentioned earlier, it's really, really critical that when you get the Google leads and any other leads, you get as many of them to call you as soon as possible. Because 24% of phone calls convert, and Gary can probably confirm some of these numbers. I'll show you some statistics in a minute. But 24% of phone calls convert, and less than 2% of form fills on a website convert. And we all know the frustration. When somebody fills out a lead on your website and you email them, 9 times out of 10, you never hear back from them. Or you call them if they give you their phone number and they don't even answer the call. And the reason for that is they've probably spoken to another law firm who might have even signed them up through online DocuSign. You've missed the opportunity. So we need as much of the traffic to come through the phone and as many people to immediately call you as possible. So there's, oh, and by the way, chat is very, very powerful. And it's somewhere in the middle, somewhere between the 24% and the 2%. We highly recommend adding chat to your website, because some people are sitting at, doing the search at work. There's no way they're going to pick up the phone and call you. They don't want to fill out a form because they don't want spam, but they will chat with you. So we see an increase of 20 to 30% of conversion when we add chat to a website. Now, here's the most important thing you can do. You've got to make sure, if you're working with an agency or if you're managing this yourself, you set up call-only ads and call extensions. Because if you look at this search result for like car accident lawyer near me, this guy has no extensions. He's got no phone number. This guy's got a click to call, what Google calls a call-only ad. So if I click this, it doesn't go to his website. It's immediately a phone call. This guy has his ad and he has a couple extensions, but he also has a call extension. So he can get a phone call, but this guy can only get a phone call. Now you want to test and you want to measure, because sometimes you get too many customers calling directly. So you want to offer them the opportunity to go to your website, because sometimes you can throw the economics of this out if you have only call only. So here's an example of ad, and call extension. Like, who's going to get the phone call on this page? 90% chance this guy's going to win out with the call extension, or this guy's going to win out with the call only ad. And as I said before, 9 times out of 10, if you can convert this person, they're not going to call someone out. If you can DocuSign them on the phone, and Gary's going to teach you how to do that. Very, very critical. Now, the next piece, I talked a lot about measurement. So we do very precise performance tracking, working with our client. They look at all the calls and they look at which ones converted to leads, and then we get very good analytics. So for example, this is one client. They got 1,700 calls, 411 converted to clients. That's a 24% conversion rate. That's the number I showed you before. They had 473 chats, 41 converted at 9%. and the forms only converted at 5%. So it's actually a little bit better than average, but only 19 clients converted. So you see that getting people to call is really, really, really critical for your campaigns. So to sort of summarize my section, you want to focus on Google. Once you've got Google nailed, once you've got your pay-per-click campaign converting at a very, very high ratio, your SEO is working like a charm, and you're doing great in Google Maps, and there's actually tremendous statistics. You can get incredible stats now from your Google My Business Insights. So we're seeing tremendous increase in the number of leads coming from Google My Business. So we're doing a lot of work SEO optimizing that middle section, the map portion that Google calls Google My Business. You've got to send as many as possible of your leads directly to a phone call using call-only campaigns and call extensions, and super mega focused on optimizing your Google mobile campaign. And then finally, you're going to convert at a much higher rate. So I'm going to switch over to Gary now. Just give me one sec, and we'll get to Gary's slides here. Gary, you're good? You got audio?
I do. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right, awesome. I'll let you know when I see the slides. I don't see them just yet.
Okay, I've just got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do this.
All right, just about there.
And this. All right, so welcome again, Gary Falkowitz. As I mentioned, he's the CEO at Intake Conversion Experts. So he'll be taking off his law firm hat and putting on his intake conversion expert hat today. So Gary, just give me a shout when you want me to flip
You got it. Yeah. Guys, I'm going to go pretty quick here. I do not want to waste your time. I'm going to try to throw as much information, valuable information your way today. By the way, Jay, thank you. That was amazing. It was really, for me, even as an attorney and someone who hears about the marketing from everybody, or on a daily basis, from my clients, from marketers I work with, you were hitting the ball on the head and the nail on the tee, and everything you said makes all the sense in the world. You got me thinking as well. So I appreciate that. It's a perfect segue into what I've been focusing my career on, which is intake. I'm not going to go in too much detail about my bio, but like most people listening to this call, I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for 15 years. I manage the intake at a very well-known law firm, Parto Wakeman. I've consulted with more than 100 law firms nationwide. My call center, Intake Conversion Experts, has worked with over 300 law firms, and we've signed more than 60,000 cases in the last 3.5 years. So I am shoulder deep in the intake stuff, and I really love to help law firms do a better job at maximizing their return on investment. The outline for my part today is, as you see, it's how does the industry work? Why are we spending so much money in marketing? The most revealing statistic at intake, how it really works, what the claimant's mentality is, the KPIs or the statistics that I want you to watch for your own law firm, general statistics about the industry, a couple of photos, and then 10 things that your firm must do to sign more cases. And Jay, we can go to the next one. So how do we think this industry works? Right? If we had to simplify this process, I would say it starts with we have to spend money. And if we spend money, the next step is that the claimant will respond. They'll reach out. After they reach out, it's our job to respond to their reach out. If they reach out to us via the phone, or they reach out to us via the web, or something in between, we respond. And then, depending upon what our response is, they're either going to sign if we want that case, or they're not. Right? That's how generally the practice is working. Our goal, every law firm's goal, should be to maximize the return on investment of your marketing investment, right? If we're going to go spend 100, some of the people in here, I recognize the names, are spending 10 grand a month on marketing. Other law firms here are spending 200 grand a month on marketing. If you're going, no matter what you're spending, the goal is to maximize your return on that spend. So before we get into how you can do that, I want to give you a sense on how competitive this industry is and how much money we're spending as an industry with respect to personal injury cases. And Jay, go to the next one here. Did you know that according to Search Engine Watch, 19 of the top 25 most expensive keywords on Google are searches related to personal injury law firms. That is wild. That's wild. It should tell you a couple of things. It should tell you that many law firms want clients. It should tell you that law firms are making money from these clients. Why? Because they're competing with each other and increasing the cost to actually show up on those for those keywords. So then the question becomes, why? Why are we spending so much money on marketing? And if I had to simplify it for you, it's for two major reasons. One is our success rate as an industry to earn a fee from a retained case is and should be very high. In other words, we're really good at what we do, right? If a case comes in and we decide that it's something we want, the reason we think it's something we want, it's because we're confident that we're actually going to be able to get some money for that claimant and in return earn a fee for our law firm. What's the second reason we're spending so much money on marketing? Because our ROI could be tremendous. Even the smaller cases. If you think about this, guys, there are cases that we resolve where the cost to generate that lead can be $10, $20, $100. Let's call it $1,000 sometimes, $5,000 sometimes. And then we earn a fee, whether it's a big mass tort, or an auto accident case, truck accident case, med mal case, and we earn a fee that is not 100, not 1,000, but 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 times our cost to acquire that lead. So what we have to focus on and what we have to figure out is how good or bad is our industry or is your law firm at intake. And the best and most telling statistic, now I've been doing this for years. I've been focusing on intake for small law firms, for large law firms, from my own call center. I've been doing it for years, and I would say that the one most telling statistic is knowing what your conversion percentage is. And Jay, that's the next slide. Now, here's the thing about the conversion percentage. When Jay was talking about the conversion percentage, he was referring to how many people that come to your site actually submit a lead. When I refer to your conversion percentage for intake or for your law firm, what I mean is of all the leads that came into your office, the first question you have to ask is how many of those qualified for representation? Once you know how many of those qualified for representation, the next question is how many of those that qualified actually retained, right? So that's the math. Of those that qualified, how many did I convert into a client? That will be telling you whether you're good at intake, because it has nothing to do with marketing. Marketing could be amazing, it could be terrible. Once you have those 100 qualified leads or 50 qualified leads, whatever that number is, you then get to determine how many is signed. And here's an example for you. Say your marketing last month got you 500 leads. And of those 500 leads, 100 of them qualified for representation. And we're going to talk about that definition in a moment. If 100 of them qualified for representation, you know that your want percentage or your qualified percentage, which is the same thing, is 20%. 100 of the 500 leads that you acquired qualified. Now let's say 50 of those retained. You want to know what's my conversion percentage that we just referred to. Your conversion percentage is of those that qualified, how many retained? 50 out of 100, which is 50%, right? The next thing you know also by looking at these numbers is what percent of your leads retained. So if 50 out of my 500 leads retained, you know that you have a 10% retention rate. And you have to talk to your marketer about that because you can then discuss with them where that number should be. Now, where should that number be? Where should your conversion percentage be based upon your competitors and based upon what they're doing? For general negligence law firms, the average conversion percentage is around 70%. That's really low, and I want to tell you why. That means for every 10 cases that you want signed, for every 10 cases that you qualify for representation, you're only signing 7 of them. That means there are 3 cases that you wanted, that contacted you, that saw your commercial or saw your website or went to your page, that reached out to you, spoke with somebody at your firm, and they walked away. So something went wrong. We, as a team, your law firm, did something wrong to push them away. For mass tort cases, because that's more nationally based and less of a presence, less of a reputation or brand, the average conversion percentage is between 50 and 60%. So now, the next question you have to ask yourself is why? Why are the numbers so low? Why am I'm spending all this money marketing. These people are calling me up. I'm just making a determination that I want this client, this claimant as a client. And they made a determination early on that they're considering my law firm as their law firm. So why are the numbers so low? And the answer is very simple. Your competition is intense. You have to understand that, especially this day and age. I mean, guys, you look what's going on right now, with the coronavirus. You have more people at home, right, glued to their television or glued to their computer, realizing that the options before them are plenty, and they can copy and paste the same summary that they sent to your law firm to 5 other law firms, right? So the competition is intense. There's too many leaks in the process that you have in place, and you're asking the wrong questions. That's why the numbers are so low. But now let's ask the next question. Where should the numbers be? And Jay, we can get to the next slide over here. For general negligence cases, you should be converting more than 90% of the claimants that qualify for representation. Now, some of you might be asking, Gary, that's a little hogwash. That's a little crazy. It's not, guys. I've consulted with law firms that are signing 400 cases per month. 400 cases per month, and their conversion rate is upwards of 98%, which means that for every 100 cases they want, they're signing 98 cases. It's doable. I promise you it's doable. So much of it has to do with the process you have in place to convert that claimant into a client as efficiently as possible. For mass tort law firms, that should be greater than 75%. For my company right now, Intake Conversion Experts, their campaign after campaign after campaign, we're getting over 80% conversion rate. You have to get there. If you're going to spend all this money, and you guys, it's an interesting industry that we chose, right? We went to law school. We learned how to litigate cases, how to research, how to represent our clients really well. But there was never that class, the real business class, but how to create your own business. No one taught that to me. I had to figure that out for myself, right? And when you start to do that, you realize there's so much that we didn't realize that we have to learn to ensure that we're not leaving money on the table. So in other words, given where those numbers should be, there's a lot of room for improvement. Now let's talk about how it really works, right? And this is the goal here, guys. And I'm gonna go through each of these 4 steps. First step is to catch them all, have a large, wide net. Second step is to rush to judgment, right? Third step is to convince them to sign. And the fourth step is to stay accountable to the process. And I have little keywords, large net, some of the other ones that should help you. So the first step in catching them all, I want you to convince yourselves that 99% of your leads have at least some value, even if it's not a case you want to handle yourself. They can be a potential claimant for future marketing opportunities. Good customer service that you provide on that phone call with a claimant that you don't want to sign can lead to potential referrals from that claimant to their cousin or their friend who might need legal assistance. What once seemed not to be a case might actually become one, right? There are plenty of cases where when someone calls up, it doesn't necessarily qualify. And then you realize after you get off the telephone call, or they realize after they get off the telephone call, that wait, there's something else missing. I'll give you an example, actually. There are claimants, I've listened to thousands of calls between claimants and intake specialists and law firms, and I get to hear a lot of the same sort of mistakes that we all make. One of those mistakes is a claimant will call up and they'll say, I was in an accident just a few days ago. I went to the hospital, but I think I'm feeling okay right now. So I'm just going to handle this one on my own, right? And 90% of law firms will say, all right, listen, good luck. If it gets worse, give us a call. They're not going to call you back. The reality is we should ask them, hey, can we give you a call back in a week to see how you're feeling? Because lots of times these injuries don't really present themselves until a few days after the accident, and the adrenaline has come down a little bit, and you can actually get some exams or tests done on your injuries. And I got to tell you, I've seen time and time again where those calls become clients. We cannot give up on potential clients so quickly. We could be referring those cases out. In our industry, guys, we work in an amazing industry where our friends in the industry will honor referral fees. So if it's not a case that you can handle, or it's not in a jurisdiction that you want to handle or can handle, go find someone that can handle that case. You'd be surprised at the referral fee that they would honor to your law firm. I know law firms that are making multiple $1 million via referral fees every year, that are actually making more money via referral fees than they are in cases they handle themselves. And lastly, you paid for that lead. Why not record it? Okay, second step, rush to judgment. I got the 24-second shot clock violation over there. You may not take your time. This is way too competitive of an industry for you to tell a claimant, hey, you know what? I'm going to think about what you just told me and give you a call back, right? We've got to understand that we have to, within our retainers that we use for claimants to sign, there should be an investigative paragraph that states, hey, we're going to represent you, and we're going to ask you to sign this retainer, and it's going to be for investigative purposes only at the outset. And if within 30 days or 60 days we determine that we can't assist, we might reject your claim. That's got to be in there. It's a protection for us so that we can then change the standard from investigate, then retain, to actually retain, then investigate, right? Keep your qualification criteria loose enough so that you can retain more cases and then have time and no pressure to investigate that matter. And hey, no big deal if you have to reject it thereafter. But you're gambling big time if you think that you have the ability to only sign cases that are certain to have value. You're gambling big time if you think you have the ability to investigate a matter prior to retention. The claimant wants ease of use. I'll tell you something that's really interesting. As Jay said, and I wrote it down here, if your website is slow to load, they're going to go somewhere else. The same goes for intake. If your intake is slow to assist, they're going to go somewhere else. So you got to be thinking that way, guys. Why are you so scared to get retained on a case? Okay, third step. Love it, Jay. That's okay. Don't worry about that. Convince them to sign. If the average person needed help, but in order to get that help, he or she needed to cross one of these bridges, which would they choose? We all know the answer, right? And by the way, it's funny I said we all know the answer. Everything I'm telling you, and quite frankly, a lot of what Jay is telling you, it's easy to find. You know that information. These aren't secrets. It's more about implementing them. It's more about having accountability processes in place to ensure that you're following those procedures. It's more about sometimes hearing from an objective eye, from an experienced eye, to sort of reassure you that what you thought is actually correct. So now if I show you those 4 bridges, we all know that the bottom right one is the one that most claimants, most people would choose. Why? Because the more attractive your bridge is, the easier it is to cross, the more desirable you make the destination, the more interested they'll be in crossing it. I'll hear calls sometimes where a law firm says, if you can go back to your doctor's office and get us that report, we can let you know whether we can help. You're expecting a claimant who has not yet signed with your law firm to go do some work on their own when they just spoke with 2 other law firms and one of them said, I'll just sign you right now and we'll do the work together, or I'll do it for you. Guys, we cannot ask claimants to do work. We cannot make this bridge that we're asking them to cross be unattractive or be difficult to cross. We can get to the next one here, Jay, which leads me to something I'm really proud of, which is called the blackjack mentality, right? You don't have to have had played blackjack to understand this mentality. I'll give you the 10-second summary. Your job is to beat the dealer. In order to put yourself in the best position to beat the dealer, you have to assume that the dealer has a face card or a card that has a value of 10 face down. And then you decide, based upon that assumption, you make certain actions, whether you want to hit, whether you want to stay. There's a similar assumption for our law firms. And here's the assumption. I want you to assume that the claimant that is contacting you now just reached out to another law firm and intends to reach out to a third law firm after they speak with you. So the question becomes, what can you do? What can you say that will make them choose you over 2 other competitors? Are you going to get a lawyer on the phone? Are you going to use electronic signature? Are you going to tell them whether they qualify on the phone? Are you going to give better customer service? You're going to have a better representative? What can you do? You've got to think about that, because the answer to that question will ultimately determine whether you're going to beat out 2 law firms or not. All right, we can go to the next one, Jay. The 4th step here is staying accountable to the process. Now, if I told you that, especially now where the stock market is, if I told you that your portfolio would double in 3 to 5 years, you would be absolutely ecstatic. Yeah. And what do we do for just a doubling of your portfolio in 3 to 5 years? We hire an advisor. We're tracking certain metrics. We're getting alerts, when to buy, when to sell. We're assessing comparable data. We're constantly reviewing our holdings. We're making changes when necessary. And that's only for doubling your portfolio in 3 to 5 years. Yet with our legal industry, in our personal injury world, when I just told you earlier that not only are you doubling your acquisition cost, but sometimes you're 10x, 1000x, 100,000x, but we don't have any accountability in place like we do for the stock market. We don't have someone who's managing that intake team. We don't have metrics that we're following. We don't have alerts when something might be failing. Guys, we've got to, I understand that we've created our business focusing mainly on litigating cases and making sure we maximize the value of the cases that we have in-house. But I got to tell you, if you want your business to grow, you've got to start focusing more on the marketing and the intake side of things and the social media side of things. That's the difference maker right now. This is not, the law firm that existed just 20 years ago. So I really implore you to put more focus on what's going on the front end of your business. Okay, next step here. Understanding the person who is contacting you. I'm going to give you some basic principles that the claimant, what their mentality is when they reach out to you. First one is they're seeking immediate gratification. When they call you or reach out to you, they could be on their lunch break. They could be taking a break from their children. Their kids could be sleeping or their spouse could be sleeping, and now they have 5 minutes to figure this out. They don't want this long, drawn-out process, especially in our digital age where we could do anything we want, or we could do three to five things at the same time on our phones. They want to know immediately. Can you help? If you can, how do I become a client? If you can't, let me know right now. They don't want it drawn out. Next step. Tell me more, right? Next one, Jay. They are all ears, right? Their interest level is highest when they first reach out to you. So every minute that passes that you don't get back to them, every minute that passes that we don't tell them whether their case qualifies, every day that passes where we don't have a follow-up call is a day where their level of interest decreases just a little bit. Keep calm. You did the right thing. This is one of my favorites. I think it's so important. If I had everyone that's on this call in one room right now, I might say to you, how many in this room have ever needed a personal injury lawyer for an accident that they've been in? And I get less than 10% of the people raising their hand. And if I asked how many of you actually called a lawyer, I'd get less people. If I said how many people needed it twice in their lives, it would be like 1 or 2 people, right? What's my point? Gary, what's your point? My point is this. The people that are contacting you likely never had to do this before. So whether their injury is a fractured foot, a black eye, they lost a leg, it doesn't matter. They've never had to do this before. And they want someone to tell them, you did the right thing by calling. We handle cases just like yours every single day. They need to exhale and know, okay, what questions do you have? I'll answer them for you. Otherwise, they go through this whole phone call, and I've heard this a million times, this whole phone call, and you can hear in their voice, hey, can you help me or not? Is this really something I should be calling you about? And at the earliest time that we possibly can, we need to reassure them that they did the right thing by calling. The next one is they want it easy. They want it easy. They don't want it difficult. If you're not using electronic signature and you're not potentially walking them through a signature while staying on the phone with them, they're going to look at that and go, I'll get to it later. And a lot of them never get to it. They want you to listen and pay attention. You got to talk to your staff about this one. I can't tell you how many times the claimant calls up. I was in an accident yesterday, and I'm in the hospital right now, and it's somebody else's fault. And the intake specialist says, okay, Mrs. Jones, just going to ask you a few questions. When was the accident? I just told you. I told you it was yesterday, right? So we've got to make sure we're actually listening to what they're saying so that we can create a relationship with them and hopefully create an attorney-client relationship with them. One more. They want to be reminded. I know I told you a moment ago that their level of interest is highest when they first call, but that doesn't mean that their level of need drops at all, right? So you need to be persistent. I don't mean 2 or 3. I mean sometimes 10, 15 times or more. You got to keep calling this claimant back. You cannot assume that because they're not picking up or they're not calling you back that they're not interested. What I want you to assume is that if they're not calling you back or they're not picking up, that they have other distractions in their life right now that are preventing them from giving you the time that you want. So you've got to stay persistent to ensure that you maximize the return on your investment. Okay, here are some statistics that I want you to make sure you're watching on a pretty frequent basis for your law firm. One, we talked about it, you gotta know your want percentage. Of all the case leads that you get in, what percentage do I want? We talked about the conversion percentage. That is my number one. We talked about your retained percentage. Average time to follow up on web leads. I'll show you some statistics in a moment. It tells you how important that is. Your average number of attempts before quitting. You got to know that, guys. It can't be 2 or 3. So if it is, you can take any one of these principles or recommendations right now and institute them in your own law firm, and I promise you'll see results. Your mail-out percentage versus your electronic signature versus your in-person at the firm versus your in-person not at the firm. Which is your best rate of success in converting a lead into a client? Because if something's working, then you shouldn't be using something that's not working. Your average sign-up time between qualifying and signing, as well as between lead and signing, right? Is it 48 hours or is it 8 days? You got to know, and you got to know why, right? The thing at intake is to constantly question, can I do something better? And why did I not do something so well in the past, right? So you got to keep an eye on it. Your retained then rejected percentage. You want to know, am I rejecting 50% of the cases that I'm retaining, or am I rejecting only 1% of the cases that I'm retaining? By the way, I'm not even saying one is better than the other. I can argue that if you're only rejecting 1% of the cases that you're retaining, that your qualification criteria might be too tight, right? Maybe you want to retain more cases that you could reject. Average number of cases qualified on the first call as opposed to qualifying it on the third or fourth call, which implies that you're doing some sort of investigation. And then the reasons that claimants provide for not proceeding. Ask them. When somebody says, I'm going to go with another law firm, or it's not interested, ask them why. What happened? Is it something we said? You'll be really alarmed and interested in hearing their answers. All right. Statistics to consider when evaluating your intake. Only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. And guys, to an extent, we are like salespeople, right? And I've seen it with law firms. 3 seems to be the number. People try 3 times on a new web lead, and then they give up, and that's a problem. You cannot stop at 3. Next one, 80% of sales are made on the 5th to 12th contact. That's just true. That's a fact. So if you're looking at how many leads did I close out last month because I never got in touch with the claimant, you probably left money on the table because you probably didn't try for a long enough period of time. Next one here is only 13% of customers believe a salesperson can understand their need. This is big. When you start to hear the calls, and by the way, if you're not listening to calls in your firm, you're missing out on an opportunity to improve. But when you start to hear the calls of your staff with these claimants, you realize that lots of times these claimants act as if, these intake specialists act as if they're a robot and they're reading off of the script and they're not creating a relationship with the claimant. And that has a direct impact on the claimant's decision. Next one here is 30 to 50% of sales go to the vendor that responds first. You don't need to be told that in any other words. That's just very clear for you. If you follow up with web leads within 5 minutes, you're 9 times more likely to convert them. Again, as clear as day. 80% of calls go to voicemail, and 90% of first-time voicemails never return. We are in a day and age right now where I don't think anyone listens to voicemails. I think you get those the transcripts of what the voicemail is. You read it and you decide whether you want to call somebody back or text them back. So you gotta. What's my point? You still gotta leave them. Just make sure they're clear and the words you're using are clear because someone's going to be reading them. Here's a photo for you. It's of a car dealership. While they might be hurting right now, I want you to understand one of the reasons why they've done so well in the past is they've had their manager get involved. If you ever go to a car dealership and you speak with a salesperson, what will they always ask you before you leave their office? Give me one moment, I'm going to bring the manager in here. Why are they doing that? They realize they may not have another bite at that apple. So they want to leave all their cards on the table, right? And make sure that when you leave that dealership, you're leaving with keys in your hand and a check in theirs. So if you're not using attorneys at intake for any reason, you're probably hurting yourselves. This is your little sign to use electronic retainer. You can, in this day and age, especially with where we are, it's a wake-up call with all the digital offices that we've created. You have to use electronic retainers. to ensure you're maximizing your ROI. Okay, guys, we're almost done over here. I want you to go back. I want you to ask your intake specialist the following question. If a claimant who contacted us told us that they're considering other law firms, what do we do to convince them to sign with us? If they don't have an answer for you, that's pretty revealing. What they say to you is also going to be pretty revealing. Bring that back to your team. And lastly, the 10 things your firm must do to sign more cases. I want you to listen to calls over and over and over again. I want you to track certain key performance indicators. I want you to authorize your team to make decisions. Don't put people on hold. Don't tell them someone's going to give them a call back. I want you to review all the decisions that are made. I want you to have attorneys get involved, especially for qualified cases and good cases. I want you to improve and strengthen your follow-up process. 3 times is not enough. Hold frequent intake meetings. Make sure your team knows what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, what the team's doing well, what they're not doing well. Hold refer-out firms more accountable. When you send a lead to another lawyer, don't just refer and forget it. That's how you leave money on the table. Make sure they're using the same process you would want to use internally. Keep your intake staff motivated and prepared. It's one of the most, even though it's one of the least paid positions, it's one of the most important positions in your firm. Lastly, convey reassurance, interest, and urgency. Guys, I am confident that if you take what Jay brought to the table today and what I presented to you today, you are going to have an immediate and direct impact on your numbers in your firm. So thank you very much from my perspective for taking some time and listening to what I had to say today.
Gary, that was fantastic. So I think the chat is working, so we can take some questions by chat.
Yeah.
I think we muted everybody just so we could present, but if anyone wants to ask a question, just send it directly in the chat. Okay. Sorry about the screen share at the start. I should have had my chat open. So here's a question from Carol. What are your hiring strategies, Gary, for intake people? Like who are they in the law firm, and how do you hire great intake professionals?
Yeah, so the answer always changes, but what, in terms of, because I've had some great intake specialists that have had experiences that I wasn't aware of would be helpful, but the reality is they've got to be comfortable on the phones. At the end of the day, they have to be comfortable with what they're explaining, what they want to do, and they have to be personable. So whether they have customer service experience, whether they have people experience, I want someone who understands that the relationship you're about to create is going to either push them towards becoming a client or push them away. So their personality on the telephone and their understanding of what you're trying to convey is probably 2 of the most important things when hiring. So when you're hiring, when you're interviewing somebody, tell them what you're doing and see if they understand it. Have multiple phone calls with them, see how they communicate, and then you'll get a better sense on how they'll be as intake specialists.
That's great. Question from EW. What if you have multiple business locations?
Yeah, I think that's for you, Jay, right?
Okay. Well, I thought it was for you too, but
Sure.
how you set up the intake, but it's definitely a creative solution. And the number one thing is to optimize your GMB, or Google My Business, your Google Maps, for every one of the locations. So you're definitely going to want to, make sure you claim the location. So that's the step most of you, I'm sure, done a long time ago, where you went into Google and you said, this is my location. They send you a postcard, old-fashioned snail mail, and you've got to put in the code that comes on that postcard. They have automated it a little bit, but they still like sending the postcard to your physical location. So you claim those locations. And then you go about the exercise of optimizing each of those locations, like I talked about, getting reviews for each of the locations, getting the name, address, phone correct, what we call NAP, name, address, phone, and then adding some content from each of those locations, adding pictures, adding videos. And there's, Google's pretty smart. They know where your phone's located because it actually has geolocation on that picture. So turn your geolocation on, take a picture in your office. Doesn't have to be fancy. It can be just, someone's birthday, take a picture and post it in the firm. what you're doing is you're feeding that SEO algorithm for the location. So Gary, what do you think about, oh, and this is very important. I always say it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. And what I mean by that is, you know, Google is kind of like Mother Nature. As I said, 80% of your most highly qualified leads are going to come from Google. So don't try and cheat Google. And so many law firms try and set up those virtual office locations at Regis's or post office boxes. You can't fool Google anymore. They know that a Regis is a Regis. And if you put your address as a Regis, it's not a staffed location. And if you're trying to cheat Google and they catch up with you, I've seen an entire Google My Business get banned for a large law firm just because they were cheating in one location. So be legit, be above board. You're way better off to partner with an accountant in a local market and get a fully staffed suite in his location as your law firm location where you take meetings than to go to like a Regis, and even better off to buy a building, rent it out to other tenants and have an office there, have your sign and your name on the door. Gary, what
Jay,
about?
I see another one here, Jay. It says, what should the average time be to spend on a new intake call? So let's ask that question a little bit differently, because the reality is if that person qualifies and you're using an electronic retainer to get it signed, and let that call last 45 minutes, right? Or an hour, I don't care. The other question is, if that case doesn't qualify, we obviously want to shorten that call, but also leave a really strong impression with that claimant. And then the middle one is, what if that claimant qualifies, but we didn't get it signed? Well, then did we leave that claimant in a position where they're likely to sign that case? I don't want you to look at that metric and start judging your intake on whether they're doing a good job or not because their average calls are 18 minutes as opposed to 8 minutes. I think rather look at it this way. For everything that went over 10 minutes, why? Did we try to get that case signed or not? Was it, if it didn't qualify, why did it go more than 10 minutes? Are we asking too many questions? Which really leads me, and I'll just shorten this answer right here, leads me to say, stop investigating so much on these calls, right? Leave your questions to determine whether it qualifies to under 10 questions. Don't ask 35 questions. There's so much that you can gather from a retained client that you can't from a new claimant. Scott, nice to see you. What do you recommend for contact methods and timing? Example, call, email, text, 5 hours later, call, email, text. Yeah, so you know me, I'm aggressive, right? We have to be aggressive given how competitive the industry is. The best case scenario is you're texting somebody immediately upon when they speak with you or when they reach out to you. And then you obviously want to follow it up with a phone call as well. Then you do want to make sure you call a second time, at least if you don't get in touch with them on the same day. You also want another text to go out. Emails should be going out every time you leave a message. After you speak with them, and guys, texting is so important to your business, right? After you speak with them, they should get a text that says, it was great to speak with you, but just a reminder, everything you told me meets our criteria to become a client of ours. We can't wait to work with you. If you have any questions, give us a call back. So make sure you're utilizing texting and emailing still, and electronic retainers. But Scott, to answer your question, I want you to be aggressive, but I don't want you to get arrested, if that's fair, right? I don't want you to be too aggressive.
Hey, Scott, good to see you, by the way. Gary, let me take one.
Electronically, I've never seen a firm utilize this process to retain a case. Brilliant suggestion. Thank you. I'd love to take credit for it, but it's been going on before I took this role. Any suggestions now I can utilize this technology? There are multiple companies out there. There's a company called AssureSign. There's a company, there's DocuSign. So there are a lot. What you really want to make sure is that somehow they integrate with whatever software you currently have, and then go one step further, not just sending them out, but actually potentially staying on the phone with them to tell them, hey, Mrs. Jones, great news. I see that you just signed it. I received it. You're now a client. I'm going to put this in the hands of the legal team. We'll call you with any questions. We're going to do everything we can to help you out. That's a great finishing of the call. That's the goal there. Follow-up question. Can you be too aggressive with follow-up calls, or persistence can hurt? Yes, you can be too aggressive. You can't call 8 times in the first hour. But persistence, the appropriate persistence will not hurt, right? At the end of the day, if you're calling 10 times in 1 week, which I think is sufficiently persistent, and they tell you after the 10th time, you know what, stop calling, I'm not interested. It's not that they're not interested because you call 10 times. They're likely not interested because they hired somebody else. Or they might be silly enough to say they want to do it themselves, and we didn't do a good enough job at convincing them or reassuring them that they contacted us. So rather than looking at it from a certain number of hours or number of times, what I'd rather you look at it as is, did we do enough? Did we skip 2 or 3 days in the first week? Because that would be silly. Imagine calling once and then waiting 2 more days to call again. That's silly, right? So you want to call multiple times the first day, multiple times the second day, and potentially multiple times the third day. That's how aggressive you want to be. You want to make sure texting's involved. You want to make sure you have some sort of electronic retention system involved.
Gary, we talked about this when we were prepping for this webinar, and I developed a service called Lead Protects where we put fake leads into the law firm to protect from someone internally selling the leads outside the law firm. And I've several companies have experienced this. And one of the benefits of Lead Protects is it shows the owner of the law firm how frequently and how professionally the folks in the intake department are following up. And I'll tell you, the best law firm, one of the best lawyers that I know, who's a multi-million dollar, super successful, highly respected law firm, they would follow up 8, 10, 12, 14 times with these fake leads. So we would create a Gmail address and a phone number and legitimately get a burner phone for every one of these fake leads we created, put it into the system, and then just watch to make sure, A, that the lead wasn't sold out of the law firm. But the moral of the story here is the best law firm out of Phoenix, these guys followed up 14 times. A couple other law firms that, were always complaining about their ability to convert leads, they would follow up once, twice, 3 times. And no matter how many times we coach them on this, they really suck. So that sort of verifies your point. Let me answer a couple questions from Gloria Lara. First question was about, sometimes our old address keeps appearing in certain places, no matter how many times we corrected it. What can be done about this? Generally, what happens with that is that one listing, such as the yellow pages, is looked at as the correct listing. And so if the yellow pages is wrong and you keep changing smaller listings, like your Foursquare listing or something, but they refer to yellow pages, they'll change it back. So they don't know necessarily that you own that listing. So you've got to do a really comprehensive citation audit. So if you can't figure that out, get in touch with me, J at 10 Golden Rules, spelled out TEN, goldenrules.com, and we can look into that for you. Gloria had another question. I've been a little uneasy about adding a chat service where people are holding the chat or not our direct staff. Basically what we find, no matter how good the firm thinks they are at managing chat, when we add one of the professional chat services, and we use Apex or Engage and a couple other services, we're even testing a AI, an artificial intelligence robot chat service. Typically the chat will improve the leads, the overall performance of the campaign, 20 to 30%. Because if your intake folks are busy or they even go to the restroom or something, they're going to miss a chat. And you can set it up so even the chat service grabs those if they're not answered right away, or if they're answered, they can grab them after hours. But you're talking about a professional chat service that has a scripting that you agree with them, and they don't try and be lawyers. They just try and identify leads, and they immediately connect you to a hot lead. So we highly recommend the chat services. We love them. Keith asks a great question. What's the biggest takeaway you'd like us to get from this, Gary and Jay? Gary, why don't you go first?
Yeah, know your baseline, guys. You may not know some of those numbers that I asked you, and those statistics know internally. Figure that out right now. Look back. If you can't look back, start today. Start holding your team, or forget your team, holding your process accountable to a certain baseline, and then you can figure out where the improvement lies ahead. Once you do that, you can start focusing on the processes, on the people, on the accountability, but at least start from a position where you know what the numbers are, and then go from there.
Great answer. And I'd sort of go back to one of the points I made in my presentation, which is you want to get as many calls as many leads coming on the phone as possible. And there's a number of ways to do that. So in your Google campaign, you can set up a call only campaign. You can add a call extension so people can immediately call from the ad. They can click right on their phone and call. You want to get as many of your search impressions actually coming on a mobile phone as opposed to a desktop as possible. Now, in some practice, you've got to test and measure all this stuff, because in some practice areas, that's not going to be the most effective. But generally, for the kind of stuff we've been talking a lot about today, which is, personal injury, car accidents, stuff like that, relatively quick turnaround. It's very different if you're a corporate lawyer, obviously. But on the quick stuff, you want them calling right away, and then you want a professional operation. So the other thing is, like, on your landing page, make sure the phone number is right there at the top, very prominent, generally top right on a desktop in the very top, and locked to that screen. So as they scroll, the phone number stays on the screen, and it's obvious that they can click it and call. So everything you can do to encourage a phone call is going to mean that Gary's team and a great well-trained intake team will convert at 24% instead of getting a form fill on an old-fashioned website that converts at only 2%. Gary, I want to give you one last question. This is my softball. What does your firm actually do? Give us a high level. If we hire an intake professional, what do you guys do, and what are a couple of the key steps, and how much does it cost to get someone like yourself involved?
Yeah, so there are two different, thanks for the softball question, Jay. Two options. One is you bring me in as a consultant. There's a daily rate. These days it's tough to, there's no traveling going on, so we find other ways to do that. And you open up your hood, and I do everything I can to maximize your intake. The other question is my call center. And that's for law firms that want to run higher volume campaigns, but don't think that they have the resources in-house or internally. So what they do is they'll spend their money on marketers, and then they'll outsource the intake to my company, Intake Conversion Experts, where we only get paid a flat fee for cases that retain. So what we're doing, we're actually gambling on the fact that your marketers are going to be really good, and then we're gambling on the fact that we're going to be really good at intake. Reach out to me anytime. It's Gary at intakeconversion.com or Gary at maxintake.com. Would love to, just like Jay said, that he'd love to talk about SEO and Google at no cost. If you have any questions, call me. I'd love to talk about intake. I'd love to help you out one way or the other. I just think that there's so much of an impact that this can have on your bottom line. And I don't want law firms to continue to say, hey, I made money last year, so that's good enough. Why not, hey, I maximized my profit last year, my revenue last year. Let's make that the goal, right? So, Jay, this was amazing. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Hope everybody had a great time today. Feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. Jay, final words?
Well, same thing, Jay at 10goldenrules.com. If you want me to, first consultation is free, and we'll take a look at your numbers, how your website ranks in Google, and we can show you how much your competitors are spending on paid advertising, and really find the areas of opportunity for you, and help you figure out where you should be focused. Gary, it was awesome. Thank you for doing this. I'd love to actually do the 3-hour intake training because it's so important. It's something we spend a lot of time with our clients, because we always feel like we send the leads over there. We got to make sure they're converting. And so I'm definitely going to get you involved with many of our clients in the future. So thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. And so people are asking if we'll send the slides. Are you okay if we send the slides out?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll send a recording, and we'll send the slides as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Great crowd today. And we'll be back next month. We're going to be doing MarTech. So we're going to be talking about the type of tools. We talked about some of them today. Landing pages, call rail tracking, call tracking, chat systems, and case management systems. So thank you all very much for being here. Thanks, Gary.
Talk to you soon, Jay. Bye.
Stay safe, buddy, and everyone else.